You never tried to steal her attention. You created space for her to give it freely. And that space, that sacred space you carved out with presence, with control, with direction, is now the place she returns to in her thoughts, even if she doesn't understand why, because she's never felt that kind of pull before, the kind that lives beneath the surface, that bypasses her mind and goes straight into her nervous system. She thinks it's you, but what she's really drawn to is who she becomes in your presence, a woman who feels more alive, more feminine, more awake, and that is the power you hold, not to possess her, but to provoke something sacred in her, not to impress, but to stand so rooted that the wind of her emotions cannot shake you. You've mastered the hidden trait, the one that doesn't chase, doesn't rush, doesn't react, the one that speaks in energy, not explanation. And now that she's felt it, really felt it, she'll never be the same, and neither will you, because you've stepped into a rare kind of masculinity, the kind that makes women crave you not for what you give, but for how you make them feel by giving nothing away too quickly. That is the Stoic edge, the silent strength, the emotional clarity, the man she doesn't understand but can't stop thinking about. If this stirred something in you, if you recognize this kind of power awakening within you, then subscribe to the channel. Not because we ask you to, but because you already know this is where you belong. Not noise, not hype, just calm, just presence, just the quiet truth of the man you're becoming. Walks in, people pause, women notice, she notices, and she doesn't even know why. This is the hidden trait. Grounded presence. It's not about confidence in the way the world sells it, flashy, noisy, performative. It's the opposite. It's a calm that comes from deep inner rootedness. You're not trying to be seen, you're simply here fully. She senses it, a man who is entirely in his body, who doesn't shrink under the gaze of others, who doesn't overreact to tension or silence. You don't need to say much. In fact, it's your restraint that draws her closer, because you hold your space not arrogantly, not aggressively, but peacefully. You're like a mountain in a storm, still steady, unmoved. And in a world full of men chasing, proving, scrambling for validation, your refusal to reach becomes the thing that pulls her in. She doesn't even know she's responding to it. She just knows that when she's near you, she feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. Curiosity mixed with calm. She relaxes, but she also leans in. She softens, but she also aches to know what's beneath that stillness. Because grounded presence isn't passive, it's active in its restraint. It radiates through your body language, your eyes, your silence. Your energy says, I am here. And I do not need anything from you to stay that way. And that is rare, because women are bombarded with men who try too hard, try to be clever, try to be charming, try to be desirable. But when you are grounded, you don't try, you are. And the feminine senses this. She feels your non-reactivity, how nothing about her behavior changes your posture. You're not swayed by her mood, you're not desperate for her attention. And that paradox of you being fully present without needing anything creates a craving, because now you're not chasing her, you're allowing her into your world. And she wants to enter it because that world feels like peace. It's not performance, it's not a game, it's the invisible frequency of a man who has gone inward and emerged whole. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. And when you find that retreat, when you bring it into the room with you, she feels it. She doesn't understand it. She doesn't need to, because attraction lives beneath logic. She'll replay the interaction later, wonder why she couldn't stop looking at you, why she felt calm but also drawn, why your silence said more than anyone else's words. It's because you've cultivated the one trait that needs no explanation, no manipulation, no performance. Presence. And that is the hidden gravity that makes her crave you. Number 2, You know who you are with or without her. Your self-possession removes the need to impress. You're not trying to impress her, not because you don't care, but because you don't need her to think a certain way about you, to know who you are, and that's where it begins. That's the shift. That quiet, immovable confidence that doesn't ask for validation, but simply exists, fully formed. Because most men don't realize this. A woman can feel within seconds whether your sense of worth comes from within or if it depends on how she reacts to you. She doesn't want a man whose confidence collapses under her silence. She doesn't want someone who adjusts his tone to match her mood. She doesn't want a reflection of her energy. She wants a man with his own. And you've built that from the inside. You've done the work. You've faced your own chaos. You've made peace with being alone with yourself. So now when she enters your space, you're not searching for identity. You're offering direction. You're not trying to win her. You're inviting her to witness something already whole. And that's what captivates her. Because in a world full of men trying to convince her of their worth, you simply let her feel it. You don't tell her your value, you walk in it. You don't bend your edges just to fit her preferences. You remain aligned with your own compass. This is what Stoicism teaches you, that identity is not a performance. It's a principle lived out in every decision, as Epictetus said. Know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly. So you've adorned yourself with calm, with clarity, with conviction that doesn't waver based on approval. She tests you, not always consciously, but she does. With subtle comments, with silence, with shifts in energy. She wants to see. Will you break? Will you chase? Will you trade your center just to stay close? But you won't, because you didn't build your center for her. You built it for you, and now it's the reason she wants to be near you. She might not say it out loud, she might not even fully understand it, but your refusal to impress her becomes the very thing that impresses her most. You're not here to be liked. You're here to live aligned, and if she fits into that, beautiful. If not, you won't lose yourself in the attempt. That energy, it's clean, it's masculine, it's addictive, because it's safe. Not because you give her everything she wants, but because you don't lose yourself trying to give it. You know who you are, not in ego, but in essence. And when a woman feels that, when she feels your identity is rooted in something deeper than her reaction, she craves it. Not because you sought her, but because she knows intuitively that men like you don't come around often. And when they do, they don't need to be chosen. They already chose themselves. Number 3, you master the art of subtle unpredictability. She can't fully predict you, and that keeps her engaged. She doesn't crave routine. She craves rhythm and surprise. She craves a man who makes her feel safe, yes, but not stagnant. A man whose essence she can trust, but whose next move she can't quite predict. Because when you're fully predictable, when you respond the same way, speak the same way, text the same things at the same time, her emotional system checks out. It's not her being bored, it's nature. Desire lives in tension, in movement, in the dance between known and unknown. And most men, they kill that tension the moment they feel emotionally safe. They get comfortable. They stop creating polarity. They trade presence for pattern. But you've learned to stay alive in your masculine mystery, not by being erratic, not by playing games, but by mastering subtle unpredictability. Maybe today you're soft-spoken. Maybe tomorrow you challenge her. One moment you listen with depth. The next, you turn and disappear into your purpose, not to confuse her, but to stay dynamic. Because when your energy is fluid but principled, she never feels like she owns you, and that's what keeps her drawn to you. She feels safe in your structure but intrigued by your freedom. She can't box you in. She can't predict every move. And that stirs something ancient in her, a kind of excitement that bypasses the logical mind. She tells herself, I don't know why I keep thinking about him. And the truth is, it's because you never gave her a full blueprint. You left room for wonder. You planted questions in her nervous system, and every answer she finds just opens another door. It's not about being mysterious for mystery's sake. It's about not being addicted to sameness. You shift with the moment. You adjust based on your deeper compass, not based on pleasing her. As Marcus Aurelius said, to live a good life, we have the potential for it. If we learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference, you're indifferent to predictable approval. You don't need to be the nice guy, the intense guy, the spiritual guy. You're the present man, and that presence has texture, sometimes warm, sometimes sharp, sometimes intimate, sometimes distant, but always authentic. And that unpredictability, when rooted in self-possession, doesn't make her feel unsafe. It makes her feel alive, because every moment with you holds the same question. What part of him will I meet today? And in that question, she doesn't lose trust. She loses control, which is exactly what allows her feminine to open. So while other men try to be consistent to the point of numbness, you remain unexpectedly real. And that's the trait she doesn't see coming, but can't walk away from. Number 4, you lead with intention, not validation seeking. You move through life with direction, not emotional dependence. She can tell within minutes if you're moving through life with a mission or if your entire energy is secretly hoping she'll become one. And when a man is secretly seeking approval, even if he hides it in compliments, humor, or politeness, she feels it. It's not what he says, it's the frequency underneath his words. It's the subtle hunger for recognition, the energy of a man hoping to be chosen because he hasn't quite chosen himself. But when you lead with intention, when every move, every silence, every boundary you hold flows from your inner compass, she feels something different. She feels a man who is directed, not distracted, not emotionally codependent, but living on purpose and on principle. You don't look to her for validation. You look through her toward the horizon you're already walking. She can join you. She can walk beside you, but she is not the reason you walk. And that is the kind of man who creates devotion, not just attraction. Because a woman doesn't fall in love with a man who needs her to lead his soul. She falls in love with a man whose soul already has direction and who invites her to rest in his clarity. Most men break here. They pivot their purpose around a woman's interest. They shift their standards, mute their truth, dilute their ambition to keep the connection alive. But you know better. You lead not with force, but with unapologetic direction. You know where you're going. You know what matters. You don't make her your reason, you make her your witness. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. So you move forward. And that movement, that quiet but relentless flow of focused energy becomes magnetic. She sees that your attention is not for sale, that your emotions are not swayed by flattery, that your day doesn't crumble based on her replies. And in that strength, she feels space to soften, because you've created emotional polarity. You don't lean in when she pulls back. You don't press in when she hesitates. You hold your path. You maintain your rhythm. And that rhythm is more seductive than any romantic gesture, because it tells her, this man doesn't seek me out of loneliness. He welcomes me from wholeness. And in that wholeness, she begins to open, not because she's pursued, but because she's finally witnessing what masculine leadership looks like. It's not loud, it's not controlling, it's clear, and clarity is everything. Because a man who leads with intention invites a woman to drop her mask, lower her guard, and trust that she doesn't have to carry the whole dynamic. He's already carrying something bigger, his inner discipline. And that, paradoxically, is what makes her crave you. Not for the words you say, not for the things you do, but for the feeling she gets when she realizes You're not looking for her to complete your life. You've already built one worth being part of. Number 5. You're unaffected by her emotional storms. Your consistency becomes her safe space. She's used to men who get swept away. When she's emotional, they react. When she withdraws, they panic. When she tests, they crumble, rage, or plead. They match her chaos instead of containing it. But then she meets you, a man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't take her mood personally, who doesn't dance with her drama but also doesn't punish it. You don't dismiss her emotions. You don't try to fix them. You simply don't get lost in them. And that's what makes her feel safe, not in the soft, cuddly sense, but in the sacred sense. Because emotional safety for a woman isn't about always agreeing. It's about stability in your nervous system. It's about feeling you're calm no matter how loud her storm gets. You don't shame her when she gets reactive. You don't lecture her when she gets distant. You don't mirror her chaos with your own. You remain unshaken, not cold, not disconnected, but deeply centered. You know the storm is hers and your role isn't to outrun it, but to be the rock it crashes against. Because her emotional surges aren't tests you have to pass. They're waves she needs to release. And when you hold your ground, you give her something most men never do. A place to return to, a steady rhythm, a grounded heart, a non-reactive presence that doesn't need her to be perfect to feel whole. And this changes everything. Because when a woman realizes that you won't collapse, won't chase, won't get pulled into the spiral, her feminine relaxes. She breathes. She begins to trust. Not because you gave her the answers, but because your non-reaction gave her a mirror. She sees her own storm more clearly, and because you didn't flinch, she starts to believe she doesn't have to flinch either. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And your mind in that moment becomes her shelter, not her prison, not her savior, just her anchor. That's the masculine gift. Not to control her emotions, but to show her by how you hold your own that they don't have to rule her. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. Your boundaries are firm. Your standard is high. But you enforce them with clarity, not anger. Because you're not here to win an argument. You're here to maintain your state. And that inner stillness, it's what she'll remember long after the fight fades, long after the silence lifts, long after she tries to test it again only to find that you're still there, still calm, still grounded. And this is when craving is born, not from drama, not from games, but from the realization that you're the first man who never needed her chaos to feel alive. You are already alive in stillness, in self-control, in the rhythm of a man who walks through fire without becoming it. Number 6, you withhold to intensify, not manipulate. She fills the silence with her own desire, which makes it real. There is a difference between withholding out of fear and withholding out of power. Most men don't know the difference. They go silent because they're unsure. They pull back because they feel rejected. They disappear to create scarcity, hoping to be chased. But you withhold with intention, not to confuse her, but to deepen the craving, because you understand this fundamental truth. What is freely given is quickly forgotten. What is earned, discovered, or dreamed about lingers. And so you don't give her everything up front. You don't explain every thought. You don't smother her with words, emotions, access. You create space. Space for her mind to become part of the story. Space for her heart to feel what arises when you're not constantly filling the air. That's where desire lives, in the gap. And when a woman feels that gap, when she notices your absence, your pause, your delay, something inside her starts writing its own script. Why hasn't he messaged me yet? What does his silence mean? Is he pulling back, or is he just strong enough not to chase? She begins to narrate the mystery, and in doing so, she's no longer just interacting with you. She's interacting with the version of you that her own longing has created. That's when the craving becomes personal. Because now it's not about your actions. It's about what she feels in the absence of your presence. And here's the secret. People value what they contribute to. When she begins to imagine, guess, question, hope, she starts emotionally investing. But it only works when the man behind the silence isn't just avoiding. It only works when your presence is strong enough to be felt even in your absence. You've cultivated that. You've built an internal world so stable, so magnetic, that even when you pull back, she leans forward. Not because you forced her, not because you withheld love as punishment, but because your restraint was rooted in self-mastery, not manipulation. And when you return, when you speak, respond, offer a fragment of affection, it lands differently. It's earned. It's felt. It pierces deeper because it wasn't always available. This is what the Stoics understood, that to master yourself is to master the rhythm of energy, when to give and when to hold. As Seneca wrote, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. So you don't waste your energy. You don't leak validation. You don't give away what is sacred just to feel needed. Instead, you give from overflow, not emptiness. And that's what makes her feel honored, not overwhelmed. That's what makes your silence seductive, not confusing. That's what makes her want you, not because you pushed, but because you pulled away with purpose. And when you do that, when your withholding is anchored in strength, when it's used not to punish, but to provoke her imagination, she doesn't just want you. She begins to create the fantasy of being the one who finally pulls you in. And that fantasy, that emotional involvement, it's hers. And that's why it matters. Because once she invests in her own desire for you, you're no longer chasing love, it's already circling you. Number 7, you radiate restrained power. She feels your strength not in dominance, but in quiet certainty. Power doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be flexed, flaunted, or forced. In fact, the kind of power that shakes her soul, the kind she can't explain but can't ignore, is the one you don't even try to show. It's the kind that reveals itself in restraint. She feels it in the way you walk into a room and don't need to dominate it. She feels it when you look at her steady calm without hunger. She feels it when you say little but your energy says everything. This is the paradox. The less you need to prove your strength, the more felt it becomes. You're not fighting to be seen as powerful. You are powerful, and you know it. You don't use it to control her. You use it to control yourself. And that control, that ability to hold your ground without force, makes her melt. Because in you, she doesn't see aggression. She sees direction. She sees protection. She sees certainty. It's not the strength of a man who overcompensates. It's the strength of a man who has faced himself in silence and walked away unshaken. She can feel the difference. Most men who posture with dominance are just boys trying to shield their insecurity. But you carry stillness like a sword. You don't talk about how alpha you are. You don't tell her you're a real man. You don't need to put her in her place. You already know your place. And because you know it, she feels safe to let go of hers. She can relax her guard. She can open her softness. She can surrender her chaos, not because you demanded it, but because your energy invited it. This is not something you fake. It's something you become through discipline, through self-respect, through making peace with your own inner war. As Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. And in your mastery, you become undeniable. Because a woman doesn't crave power that consumes. She craves power that contains. You don't overpower her emotions. You absorb them without reaction. You don't try to impress her with intensity. You let your consistency speak louder. It's in the way you listen without rushing to fix. It's in the way you touch without needing to possess. It's in the way you disappear, not to punish, but to remain whole. Every action you take whispers, I do not seek control, I am control. And that is what stirs her deeper instincts. Not fear, not admiration, but devotion. Not because you asked for it, but because your very presence made her want to give it. She can't explain why, she doesn't need to, because the part of her that craves stability, clarity, containment has already recognized you. You don't radiate the kind of power that demands obedience. You radiate the kind that makes surrender feel safe. And when she feels that, when she knows she's near a man who holds power, not like a weapon, but like a responsibility, she doesn't walk away. She leans in, again and again, because now she's not falling for your charm, your looks, or your talk. She's falling for what every high-value woman secretly longs for. A man who leads with presence and never has to raise his voice to be followed. Number 8. You are her mirror, not her rescuer. She grows near you, and that growth keeps her craving more. She doesn't want to be saved. No matter what she says, no matter what her past tells you, at her core, the high-value woman doesn't crave a man who swoops in with solutions. She craves a man who can see her without trying to change her. A man who reflects back the truth she's afraid to face, not with judgment, but with calm clarity. You are that man. You don't become her project. You don't make her your project. You become a mirror, still, clear, honest, and in your presence she sees the truth of who she is becoming. You don't fix her chaos, you hold your own. You don't validate her confusion, you lead with inner order. You don't carry her emotional burdens, you simply don't add to them. She rises in your company not because you told her to, but because you live as an invitation to rise. Most men try to earn love by giving endlessly. They offer advice, comfort, gifts, attention, all in an effort to be needed. But she doesn't want to need you, she wants to respect you, and respect doesn't come from rescuing, it comes from reflecting. Because when she sees that you won't abandon your truth to accommodate her moods, she trusts you. When she sees that you won't shrink to make her feel taller, she relaxes. You don't play therapist. You don't become her emotional crutch. You become a standard, one she begins to measure herself against, not because you ask her to, but because she wants to meet you where you are. That's when the craving goes deeper, because now it's not about dopamine or romance or attention. It's about alignment. She starts to ask herself, who do I become when I'm with him? And the answer is what keeps her coming back. She becomes more feminine, more honest, more emotionally aware, more refined, because you won't bend down to pull her up. You'll remain still at your level until she chooses to climb. And if she doesn't, you don't force it, you walk on. Because your path isn't dependent on being admired. Your peace isn't earned by how much you're needed. You're not looking for someone to rescue, you're looking for someone ready to evolve, ready to take responsibility, ready to enter your life, not as a distraction, but as a companion in expansion. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You don't explain who you are, you live it. You don't demand love. You embody what love feels like when it's rooted in maturity. And when she feels that when she's with a man who doesn't collapse, doesn't perform, doesn't correct her with ego, she begins to change. Not because you told her to, but because something in her wants to. That kind of transformation creates a craving that no compliment, no attention, no seduction ever could. It's not that she wants you, it's that she wants who she becomes when she's with you, and that is the most powerful position a man can ever hold. Not as her hero, but as her mirror. She won't say it out loud, but she thinks about you more than she should, and she doesn't even know why. It wasn't the words you used. It wasn't your style, your wit, or even your strength. It was the silence you mastered, the restraint you held, the stillness that stayed when every other man would have moved. She felt it, that quiet power, that slow, steady pulse of a man who wasn't chasing, performing, or proving, but simply being. And in a world where most men race to be noticed, you stood still. And in doing so, you made her lean in. She didn't even know what she was leaning toward. Only that there was something different. A gravity that pulled her not with pressure, but with peace. Because you weren't reacting, you were responding. You weren't waiting to be chosen. You had already chosen yourself. And so you became unforgettable, not by being louder, but by being deeper.